All right, ready to dive in. Today, we're tackling something we all deal with, that inner voice, the constant chatter in our heads.
Oh yeah, we've got excerpts from Find Your True Voice for this deep dive.
And this book goes way beyond just surface level stuff, you know?
Yeah.
It really gets into how much power these inner conversations have. Like, they can actually make or break us.
It really is incredible how those internal voices can shape so much.
Right. It's like
Yeah.
they have this power to shape our reality.
Totally. And one of the things I found so fascinating about this book is how it breaks down these voices into like a critical voice and an encouraging voice.
Yeah, that really resonated with me too. It's like I'm constantly battling those two sides in my own head.
Well, and the book makes this point that a lot of this stems from our experiences, especially childhood.
Okay, yeah, so those early experiences kind of set the stage for these internal struggles.
Exactly. They can really plant the seeds for how that inner dialogue plays out.
So let's dig into this critical voice a bit more. The book describes it as this voice that pops up, often coming from past hurts.
And it can really sabotage us, mess with our thoughts and behaviors.
It's sneaky too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Like it can disguise itself as if it's trying to protect us.
Like it's giving us good advice.
Right. But in reality, it's just dragging us down with all this negativity, filling us with self-doubt.
So it's more than just that voice that tells us we're not good enough. It's deeper than that.
Way deeper. The book argues that this critical voice can actually hold us back in pretty much every area of life. Work, relationships, even our own personal growth.
So it's like it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, it's like we start to believe we're incapable of reaching our goals because that's what the voice keeps telling us.
The book has some pretty striking examples, like thinking I'm fat might lead to crazy restrictive dieting.
Oh, for sure, I remember that one. Or like thinking I'm not good with words, and then bam, self-isolation.
I mean, have you ever noticed any of these kinds of patterns in your own life?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think we probably all have to some extent, right? But the good news is that this book doesn't just leave us hanging with this critical voice. It offers a way to fight back. It talks about this encouraging voice.
Right, like having our own personal cheerleader up in our heads.
Exactly. It's that voice that's all about kindness, support, reminding us of what we're good at.
So how do we tap into that encouraging voice?
Well, the book really stresses the importance of cultivating it, learning to trust it, letting it guide our choices.
But isn't that a bit too simple? Like, just telling ourselves nice things doesn't magically erase all the deeper issues, right?
You're right. It's definitely not that simple. The book acknowledges that we need to address the root causes, the real reasons behind those negative thoughts.
So getting to the core of the problem.
Yeah, but the book also argues that when we strengthen this encouraging voice, it helps us challenge those negative thoughts more effectively.
So it creates a more positive environment up there in our heads.
Exactly. And this is where understanding how our past experiences shape our present comes into play. The book spends a good amount of time on this idea of life scripts.
Life scripts, what are those?
It's basically the idea that a lot of our deeply ingrained beliefs about ourselves, about the world, they were formed way back in childhood.
So it's like we're living off this blueprint that was created years ago, maybe even from experiences we barely remember.
Exactly. And the book has this example of a woman named Sheila. She's seeking career guidance, totally unrelated, right? But during this process, she stumbles on this realization. Her relationship patterns always hitting the same roadblocks. And she figures out it's because of this deep-seated belief that she's unlovable. And guess what? That belief was rooted in her childhood.
Wow, that's heavy. Makes you think, right? How many of the things we're struggling with now are actually tied to these subconscious life scripts from our past? But if they're so deeply ingrained, can we even change them?
That's the hopeful part of the book's message. He says we're not stuck. We have the power to rewrite those scripts.
Okay, so there's hope.
But it takes work,
Mhm.
right? We have to make a conscious effort. We have to acknowledge what happened in the past, work through those experiences, and learn to be kinder to ourselves.
So it's more than just positive thinking. It's about healing those deep emotional wounds.
Absolutely. And the book goes into this concept called the embodiment of emotions. For example, let's say someone has serious social anxiety, right? They might physically avoid social situations because of that anxiety.
So their body is literally reacting to that anxiety.
Right. And the book argues that often these physical reactions are connected to past emotional experiences.
Okay, I see. So if we're holding on to unresolved emotional stuff, it can actually manifest in physical ways.
Exactly. The book talks about this other woman named Sarah who's using avoidance to cope with anxiety. And where's that anxiety coming from? You guessed it, childhood experiences.
So how do we actually deal with these embodied emotions? Does the book give any solutions?
It does. And this is where things get super interesting. The book offers a whole bunch of healing tips and what it called recovery recipes.
So, like practical advice.
Yeah, things we can actually use in our daily lives to transform that inner dialogue. One that really stuck out to me was the emphasis on gratitude practice.
Gratitude. Doesn't everyone talk about that these days? What makes this book's approach different?
Well, while journaling and stuff is helpful, this book digs a little deeper. It suggests that practicing gratitude can actually rewire our brains, like by focusing on the positive, and it can be even the smallest things we can train ourselves to look for the good.
Even when things are tough.
Yeah, it's about shifting perspective, breaking free from that negativity bias we all have.
That makes a lot of sense. Like we're actively choosing to focus on the good instead of letting the bad take over.
Exactly. And another thing the book suggests is creating a dream board, which I know can sound a little woo-woo, but...
Well, I'm a pretty visual person, so the idea of making something visual to represent my goals, it's kind of appealing.
Right. It's a tangible reminder of where you're headed, what you want to achieve. But let's face it, just visualizing stuff isn't enough. We have to take action. And this is where the book brings up mindfulness.
Mindfulness, another buzzword, right?
But what does it actually mean in the context of this book? Is it just meditation?
It's definitely more than that. The book describes it as a way of tuning into our thoughts and emotions. But the key is without judging them.
So it's like observing what's happening in our mind.
Exactly. And through that observation, you can start to recognize that critical voice when it pops up and choose to respond differently.
With more kindness, I guess.
Exactly. It's about creating that pause, that space between the thought and our reaction to it.
Okay, I see. Like hitting the pause button before we spiral into negativity.
Exactly. And that's where we develop that inner observer, the part of us that can detach from those negative patterns and make conscious choices about how we want to respond. Okay, so now I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together. But there's one thing I'm still not quite getting: inner child work. What does that even mean?
Okay, so imagine connecting with your younger self, that part of you that experienced the world through a child's eyes. That's what inner child work is all about.
So it's like going back in time to that younger version of ourselves.
In a way, yeah. It's about understanding those early experiences, recognizing what needs might not have been met back then, and offering that younger version of ourselves compassion and healing.
So it's almost like giving our younger selves a hug.
You could say that. It's a way to nurture those vulnerable parts of ourselves and learn to accept ourselves fully.
This is heavy stuff, but I have to say I'm really intrigued to explore it further.
Well, that's the great thing about this book. It gives us this whole framework for understanding how our past, even way back to childhood, can impact us today.
And it gives us real tools to use, right? Practical strategies for dealing with that inner critic and nurturing that encouraging voice. I am excited to dive deeper into these strategies in our next session.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the power of inner dialogue.
We're picking up where we left off, still exploring these awesome insights from Find Your True Voice. You know, one thing that really stood out to me in this section is how much the book stresses that we don't have to be defined by our past experiences.
It's like it's giving us permission to finally break free from those old patterns and limiting beliefs.
The ones that have been holding us back for who knows how long.
Exactly. And a big part of that process, according to the book, is about cultivating self-love.
Okay, self-love, that's a big one these days, but what does that actually look like? Is it just about thinking positive thoughts all the time?
It's definitely more than that. The book really digs into this idea that self-love is an active choice.
So it's something we have to work at.
Exactly. It's something we choose to do every single day.
Yeah.
And it's about treating ourselves with the same kindness and compassion that we would offer a good friend.
So that means setting healthy boundaries, listening to our own needs, and speaking kindly to ourselves.
You got it. It's about recognizing our worthiness and treating ourselves accordingly. And it's not about vanity or being self-indulgent. It's more about understanding that we deserve care and respect.
Like we're worthy just as we are.
Exactly. And this ties into another key concept that the book dives into: the connection between our physical and emotional well-being.
Yeah, and this is where that idea of embodiment comes up again, right?
Right. The book really emphasizes how our emotions can actually manifest physically in our bodies.
So it's like our bodies are giving us clues all the time about what's happening emotional.
Exactly. The book encourages us to actually pay attention to those signals. to really listen to what our bodies are trying to tell us.
Because those signals might be trying to tell us something important.
Right. For example, let's say you have unresolved trauma, or maybe you're dealing with a lot of emotional stress. The book says that those things could show up as physical symptoms.
Like what kinds of symptoms?
Things like headaches, digestive issues, or even chronic pain.
Wow. Okay, so our emotional health can have a huge impact on our physical health.
Exactly. And the book says that true healing needs to address both of those sides.
So it's not just about fixing what's broken, it's also about celebrating what's good.
Yes. The book suggests doing things that bring us joy and that nourish our bodies.
So things like dancing or spending time outdoors, even enjoying a delicious meal.
Exactly. It's all about moving our bodies, connecting with our senses, and experiencing pleasure. It's about honoring that deep connection between our physical and emotional selves.
It's interesting how all these concepts are so connected. And as we're talking about this idea of transforming our inner dialogue, cultivating self-love, it makes me think about the importance of connection, not just with ourselves, but with other people too.
That's a major theme that comes up in the book. It talks about the importance of connection on a few different levels, connecting with ourselves, connecting with other people, and even connecting with something greater than ourselves.
So we're not meant to go through this alone.
Definitely not. The book encourages us to build a support system. Reach out to friends, family, maybe join a support group, or even seek professional help.
So having a network of people who can offer encouragement and just listen when we need it.
Yeah, and it's not just about receiving support, it's about giving it too. The book talks about practicing empathy and compassion, recognizing that we're all in this together.
So helping others can actually be part of our own healing process.
It can. And as we expand our sense of connection outwards, the book also invites us to explore the power of spirituality.
That can be a tricky topic for some people. I know some might find it intimidating, but I'm curious to hear how the book approaches it.
It's presented as a way of connecting with something bigger than ourselves, something that can give us meaning and purpose. And it's not about subscribing to any specific religion or belief system.
So it's more about finding what resonates with us personally.
Exactly. The book talks about exploring different spiritual practices, whether it's meditation or prayer, or even just spending time in nature. It's all about connecting with our own inner wisdom.
I appreciate that it doesn't prescribe one specific path.
Yeah, it's more about encouraging that exploration and personal connection. And as we go through this process of self-discovery, it's important to remember that it's an ongoing journey.
So it's not about reaching some final destination.
Not at all. It's about embracing all of it, the ups and downs, the progress and the setbacks. The book encourages us to be patient with ourselves and celebrate each step of the way.
So recognizing that we're always evolving, always learning.
Exactly. And the book reminds us that setbacks are going to happen. It's inevitable. But those setbacks are also opportunities for growth.
So instead of seeing those setbacks as failures, we can use them to learn and move forward.
Yes. And as we keep exploring these ideas and applying them to our lives, it's important to remember one really key takeaway from the book. We have the power to create the life we want.
So it's not just about accepting what is, we can actually change things.
Absolutely. We have the power to choose our thoughts, our beliefs, and our actions. And that's a big deal. By tapping into that power of our inner dialogue, we can create a life that aligns with what we truly value.
That's a really powerful message.
It is. And as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, let's take a moment to reflect on what kind of seeds we're nurturing in our own lives.
What thoughts are we choosing to water, and what kind of reality are we creating with our inner dialogue?
Welcome back. It's the final part of our deep dive into Find Your True Voice.
We've covered so much already, like from understanding those battling voices in our heads to the mind-body connection. It's been a journey. It really has. And now I'm curious about the practical stuff. How do we take all this knowledge and really use it? Knowledge is great, but it's only powerful if we put it into action.
Totally agree. It's one thing to understand all these ideas, but actually integrating them into our lives, that's where the real magic happens.
So how do we get there? Does the book offer any guidance on that?
It does. And one of the most practical suggestions is to create a personalized healing plan. It's basically like designing a roadmap for your own inner transformation.
A roadmap, huh? I like that analogy.
Yeah. And the cool thing is it's tailored to you, your specific needs, and what you want to achieve.
So there's no one-size-fits-all approach?
Nope. It's all about figuring out what works best for you. So this plan might include setting aside time for self-reflection, maybe through journaling, meditation, or whatever resonates with you. It's about having some structure, a framework for your healing journey.
Okay, so we're talking about creating new habits, establishing routines that support our growth.
Yeah, exactly. But then there's the other side of it. Those old habits, those ingrained patterns that might be holding us back. How do we deal with those?
The stuff that's been with us forever.
Right. Well, the book talks about identifying our triggers, those situations or people that activate that critical voice or lead to self-sabotage.
So those things that make us spiral.
Yes. It's about becoming aware of what sets us off, what pattern send us down that negative path.
Okay, and once we know what those triggers are, what then?
Then we can start to create healthier ways of responding.
Can you give us an example?
Sure. Let's say you notice that you always get caught up in negative self-talk after being on social media. So maybe you decide to limit your time on social media, or you make a conscious effort to focus on the good stuff in your life after you've been online.
So being mindful of the impact those things are having.
Yes. It's about taking control instead of letting those external things control us.
This all makes sense, but I'm thinking, this sounds like a lot of work. How do we stay motivated through all of this? It can feel overwhelming.
That's where celebrating our progress comes in. The book really emphasizes that. Even if they seem small, acknowledging those wins can make a huge difference.
So basically give ourselves credit for the effort we're putting in.
Exactly. Celebrating those wins, big or small, reinforces the positive changes. It's a way to shift from self-criticism to self-appreciation.
I love that. This is really resonating with me, but let's be honest, this whole journey, it's not always easy, is it?
Oh, absolutely not. The book acknowledges that. There will be bumps in the road, moments of progress, and moments where we might feel like we're taking a step back.
So it's not all sunshine and rainbows.
Definitely not. But those ups and downs, they're normal. They're part of the process.
So how do we handle those times when we stumble?
The book says to approach ourselves with compassion, with understanding. It's like, imagine a good friend is going through a tough time. Would you beat them up for it?
No way, you'd offer them support, right?
Exactly. So why not treat ourselves the same way? Those setbacks, they're normal. They're part of growing. And we can always get back up and try again.
So it's all about resilience.
Yes. And learning from those mistakes, using them as fuel to move forward. And as we wrap up our deep dive into Find Your True Voice, we want to leave you with this. One of those powerful messages from the book is that we have the ability to create the life we want.
We're not just stuck with whatever hand we're dealt.
Nope. We have choices.
Yeah.
We can choose our thoughts, our beliefs, and our actions. And that's where the power lies. By using the power of that inner dialogue, we can create a life that truly reflects who we are.
This has been an incredible conversation. So much to think about and apply to our lives.
It really has been. Remember, this journey of transformation starts from within. It's about awareness, self-compassion, and choosing to embrace the power of your own thoughts.
You have the power to create a more fulfilling, more authentic life. It all starts with one step, one thought. So start today, start small, and believe in your own ability to transform.